you know, there's a lot of thought that goes behind it. So it's really, for me at least, really interesting to hear how someone kind of gets that information from all these small trips and then puts a big trip together of 30 plus days. So I'm really excited about it. My name's Nick. I've had the pleasure of working with Dan for about 6 years now, and cool to see the progress of and the development of Dan's kind of guiding and sea kayaking journey, and now he's gone off and on this epic journey, and I would very interested to hear at the end of it what his plans are in the future for expeditions, and we can say that for the question. So yeah, I'm really excited. I've seen hardly any photos of this trip, and because we're very strict at work, we don't talk about our recreational activities, so we haven't talked about the trip at all, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, first of all, thanks for coming. There's a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new faces, which is really cool. We weren't exactly sure how many people will turn up, and it's great that so many people turn up. And I think there's going to be a few stragglers coming in as well midway through. So yeah, thanks very much, and taking some time out and to listen to my adventure. I've got a bit of a presentation. A sea kayak guide, not a tech person, so she'll be a bit rough at times. But bear with me. Hopefully technology plays part, and then at the end we can do a bit of a Q&A, because I know lots of people have got big questions. Those Q&A will hold a prize at the end for some of the best questions as well, so think long and hard about them. Yeah, we should get into it. Do you need the speaker put on for Bluetooth? Yes.
Can I pass it you, John?
Your IQ skills.
Yeah, I'm on it.
It's going.
It's on Bluetooth, Dan. Like, might not be.
Okay, we can ask a few questions now.
Power down. Welcome. AM, FM, Bluetooth.
She must be warming up. Like I said, technology. Yeah. In the one spot.
Won't be here for long.
What can we hang off?
That's cool.
Tom, whatever, Tom.
Nick told me to take the bags off the window.
Well, if anyone's been following my journey, they've probably seen this picture here as one of the well-known pictures I took at the very end. Is kind of holding the kayak. It's really synonymous with finishing an expedition in the Pride. It also shows you how strong I've gotten. I've kind of broken it up into a little bit to tell you a bit about me. Stop. No, go back. So who am I? My name's Daniel O'Connor, originally from Ireland, born in Dublin, but then moved to Donegal when I was about 12, which gives me a funny accent. I haven't lived in Ireland for about 8 years. Typical city kid, grew up in a city in a large town, spent most of my time playing soccer, and very little time actually out in the outdoors, playing soccer, doing athletics. When I had any free time, I would nag my parents to send me down to my grandparents so I could run around and play in the mountains, or the hills was we have over there. And the most outdoor experience I had as a kid was running around the hills of Donegal after sheep. I got through school, went to university and studied engineering, became an engineer after 4 years in Belfast University in Belfast. And in the height of the recession there was no work here, so after one drunken night I ended up in Australia. Spent 11 months travelling around Australia. Heard about this awesome place called New Zealand through a girl who I met in Melbourne, who actually happened to be, this is how small Ireland is, she was the neighbour of one of my best friends, and I knew her sister quite well from school. She recommended New Zealand. I thought it was a good idea. Came to New Zealand, and then my eyes were opened up with a whole new world of being in the outdoors and getting into outdoor activities. Today I work as an Auckland Sea Kayaks guide and run trips as we do with Auckland Sea Kayaks, and you can find loads of information on our website about that, and I'll bore you with the details. And how I got here was after spending some time in New Zealand. I worked as an engineer for Fletcher's Construction, worked on some of their big projects like ASB North Wharf and TVNZ's head office and next to the convention centre. And then also the science block before it got built on AUT, I think it is. Yeah. After doing 2.5 years of the 9-to-5 lifestyle, I couldn't figure out why I was spending 5, maybe 6, maybe 7 days working, and then only playing for 1 or 2 days. So I thought this balance was not right. I had a lot of money, but I was poor in time. So I was young enough and dumb enough that I quit in my mid-20s, and I started to tick off things on my bucket list. I travelled across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, and found my way to France, where I did things. This is in Mongolia, first horse ride. And then I found myself in France doing a snowboarded season with not a lot of money left. Rang my sister, ran out of her money as well, and then needed to find a new career path. So I wanted to go to Norway, and I always liked the water. And this is me in K2 in Pakistan. This is at base camp, second highest mountain in the world. This is Donegal, Jersey. This is the Northern Lights, covered by the Southern Light. And yeah, I found myself moving to Norway, where I became an intern at a sea kayaking company, and there I fell in love with sea kayaking, and a seed was planted. Bring us back to July, mid-July, or even further back. I was planning to go this little red dot up here, which is in BC, British Columbia, west coast of Canada. And this is Plan C, me and Jeannie, the explorer, go around. So we spent 35 days paddling around Vancouver Island, which is that exact blue line, I think. And it was followed by the Garmin InReach. Did it solo, and it took 35 days, 28 paddle days. There was the distance is there, 663 nautical miles, or 1,228 kilometers. The average distance was about 24 nautical miles, or around about 40 kilometers. And the longest day was on my birthday, actually. It was about 40 nautical miles, and that went on for about 14 and a half hours, which was a pretty long day. The biggest day I did was probably a few days, about 4 or 5 days from the end, where I paddled for 8.5 hours without stopping because the conditions were too big. I'll touch on them a little bit later. So the seed was actually planted a long time ago when I was a teenager, and this is the bay in where my family's from, in Dingle. And my uncle is responsible for me getting on this path because he had a sea kayak, or a couple of sit-on-top kayaks that he took me out and paddled in the bay. So every time I go down to him, I go paddling. Then I broke his paddle, which is bolted together with screws and nuts and cable ties. And it wasn't only till then, when I moved to Norway, that the kind of seed started to get fed even more so. When I moved to Norway, I started to learn these different skills about sea kayaking and moving and the benefits of it. And then as I went to paddle festivals, which now replaced what I used to go to in music festivals, I was listening to these adventure stories like you guys are here. I was a participant. And so that sparked an idea, and I seen all these other people who were doing these awesome trips, and I was like, man, I'd love to do that one day. Then last year, me and Nick sat down, and he offered me a permanent contract. Part of the negotiations was that I could have a winter off, because I've been working 4 seasons back to back between Norway and New Zealand, and I want to have my own time to test out my skills. So we agreed that I would have the winter off, then I'd come back and I would work a full year. In Melbourne, I went to ISCUS, which was another conference with outdoor educators, and then that was when I was like, right, I'm going to go to the west coast of Vancouver. Plan A was to go to do the Inside Passage, which I started planning for in December 2018. Well, like I said, it was 4 years in the making. Plan B was to do half the section of that, and Plan C was actually what I did, which was Vancouver Island. This is me and Erica, who's probably would have done the trip with me, but she passed away a couple of years ago, and it's in Norway. And like Nick alluded to, it takes a lot of work to get into planning. So I originally planned for 66 days, 2,000 kilometers, but there was a lot of things that happened. As I was planning, I got a concussion in mid-February, which set me back. And so then I couldn't sit down and do all the detailed planning that I needed to do, and I had to focus on rehab and put the trip somewhat aside. As I went through rehab, it was quite challenging because I had to, responsibility was to my health and then also with work and trying to balance that out. Happened probably at the worst time as anything ever does, Murphy's Law, in the middle of our peak season, so we were man down. We'll go back one. Yeah, so rehab happened. Then after that, we finally got back on track, and then I missed the flight to get to Vancouver in the start of June. So then I'm back to uncertainty. Eventually, I got my flight, which was 3 or 4 weeks later. After I got my visa sorted, and then it was right. I got to go now, but I've got to create a new plan. As part of my preparations, I wanted to do it single-use plastic-free. So that it would have been a lot easier if I did the trip and bought as I went. It would be so much easier and a lot less planning and stuff. But I wanted to do it with as minimal impact as possible, and also to perhaps create something like we're doing here is a conversation and awareness on how we can do in our day-to-day life. If we can do big trips like this, single-use plastic-free, surely we can do a little bit better in our day-to-day life. So part of that was dehydrated meals. So that had really good nutrition on there, and then also that means I could buy bulk foods here, make big meals, and then package them down into different meals. I wasn't actually allowed to bring any meals into Vancouver because of customs and so forth, but I was really lucky that an actual sponsor came forward and actually made me home-cooked vegetable dehydrated meals, which was really, really cool. Along the way, being single-use plastic-free, I always wanted to touch on what damage in these beautiful, pristine wilderness areas we're actually having an impact. And part of that was raising my own awareness. So as I was in rehab, I couldn't run, but I could walk. So I used to walk around my neighborhood. And as I was walking, I would just pick up all these little bits and pieces along the way. And this is just some of what I found along the waterways. I went through a series of physios, some OTs, doctor's appointments with the concussion. And a really, really good close friend also really helped me out a lot. And then my kind of last resort was the chiropractic centre, which is kind of funny because I've always been taught that chiropractic is the black art, but in this case it worked for me. And after going through the rehab, the doctors, the OTs, they all recommended I didn't do the trip, and they referred me back to the specialist who had seen it initially, who'd seen it all before, and he thought, "You'll never see me again, I'll be right in a few weeks." Go forward 3 months and I was still not recovering, and it was really, really slow. So me and him sat down, we had a conversation. He checked all over my symptoms again, and then he asked me, like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "Oh, I think I could do it. I'm pretty sensible, I'm not going to put myself at risk, but I do want to get out there." And he says, "The best thing for you right now is just to get out there. The sooner you can get out there, the better." Which was hugely a huge weight off my shoulders, and really inspirational that someone in his level, which he's pretty much at the top of his tier, would recommend that I go and do this trip. And his logic was being in a city environment with all the distractions and stuff was only going to slow me down, whereas if I was in a wilderness environment with nature and minimal distractions and in a set routine, my brain would have a chance to recover and I wouldn't be stressed so much. So through a friend, I got in touch with the chiropractic college, and there I spent 2 weeks intensively for going like sessions every other day, because part of my concussion I'd actually got a whiplash, and I'd did some things in my neck, and then that transpired into tendonitis in my right shoulder and elbow, which meant when I could paddle, I couldn't paddle because it was too painful. So they helped realign my body, get everything working, and got me right. When I got back to Ireland, I was supposed to originally have 2 weeks. I ended up having about 6 or 8 weeks. So I managed to get some time out and explore Dingle, which was really nice to see. This is where my family's from. And even there, in a beautiful place, probably the nicest place in Ireland in my opinion, and one of the most beautiful places in the whole world. Somewhere where I would easily live if I go back to Ireland. I could still find all this plastic floating in. And this is just what we can see on the surface. Eventually I did arrive, got to Vancouver, was met by one of my good friends, Pruntius, and he set me up, and he was, as you'll see the trend throughout this, is like there's a lot of people involved. He was so helpful, and he eventually helped me get over to Vancouver Island, where I met Blue Dog Kayaking, who helped support my trip. I met Jeannie, which is the Explorer. The Latitude is another boat from NDK. And they gave me over to the garage for a few days to help pack and to prepare for my trip. They're also really good and took time out of their own busy schedules to ferry me around to go things like, this is some of the gear from sponsors. The bulk barn to pick up some bulk foods. And so this is how I travelled. So a bulk barn with Kaikara bags, which are on display over here. You can check them out when you get time. I was able to accumulate all my food. So I managed to pack for, this is quite a famous painting here in New Zealand. So I was really lucky to have little snippets of inspiration along the way, thanks to Nicholas Mead. And eventually it all came down to this one day. This is day one, this is all my gear, and then actually this is all the food. So this all has to go in this expedition kayak, which is, yeah, you might look like it doesn't fit, but it just fitted, and I just fit around it as well. This was the accumulation of 6 months and 4 years work, and countless amount of help along the way. Even then, when I was getting packed for that, there was no idea that I would make one day, if I would get on the water, turn around because it just was too much for me, or I was going to get it the next day or the day after. So I literally went on there with the hope of making it around the island, but I literally had to go day by day, and then knew that I had a good support on land if I needed it too. So 35 days of food and all the gear I would need fitted into this Nigel Dennis Kayak Explorer. This was my dream boat, so it was a real honour and privilege to be able to paddle this boat. This is actually the type of boat that's inspired me 4 years ago. It was sitting on the top of the rack at our kayak shop that I first worked for, and I was in awe of it, and anytime I got a chance to paddle, I would paddle it. So NDK, they make these kayaks, and it was in Wales, and he actually shipped it over. And I couldn't believe the day when I was on the phone to him, and he was like, yeah, what colour do you want? And I was like, Nick, what colour should I get? He goes, yellow. So this took about an hour to pack all in, and then when it was got into the water, it was just floating. And Dave, who's the owner of Blue Dog Kayaking, who's highly experienced, one of the top instructors in Canada, he didn't tell me at the time. He was like, "Yeah, I wasn't sure you were going to get out of the bay. The water line was right on there. Like any more weight, and you would have been sinking and taking on water." But thankfully, it was quite flat. And this was the first day we were paddled into a headwind, and this is the first camp where I met quite a lot of other kayakers there, which was quite nice to have that company, especially on that first night. This is probably about day 3, and the good thing about, or the bad thing about Vancouver is the feckin' tides. They're huge, and they're not diurnal like we have here. So diurnal means that every 6 hours roughly they change. There it could be 4, could be 8, could be 12, whatever. So you'd land in a high tide in the dark and like, yes, don't have to hold up the beach. You wake up the next morning and then you've got to find a way of getting it down there. This kayak weighs about probably 70 kilos without me, and so to move it is a lot of effort. So thankfully there's a lot of logs over there, so we're able to get it down. But this process could take maybe an hour and a half sometimes. And it was never short of a spectator along the way. Oh, I actually had a disclaimer, so I probably should put this in there before I forget. Warning, there is profanity, probably terrible pronunciation, amateur photography, and you probably leave tonight inspired to pack up and go on your own adventure. So apologies for that. This is also my first time presenting this journey, and any kind of journey as well. So really keen to hear some feedback at the end of it as well, if there's anything. Yeah, cool. So every time I topped up to the beach, I would take a break, stretch my legs, have a bit of food, and take a few pictures. And then I would just go for a bit of explore, and then it was always something to be found in there. And you didn't have to look far. There was a lot of these guys along the way. These are seals. At that time it was pupping season, so they were pretty boisterous when they seen me, and they would actually stalk me for about 30 minutes till I got out of their way. And this is my nightly routine. So most of the time I would be on my own during the day and at night, and I would plan day by day. I had a rough plan, but then I had to work out the next day how I was feeling that day and how far I could get, and also where I could stop if I needed to resupply or if I needed to camp where I do. So this was a typical night for me. Oh yeah, here's the first video. Somewhere. So this is probably day 4, and it was oh, hang on. This was after I was, I had a big day, and I kind of took things day by day and sometimes minute by minute. That day I had planned to go for about 15 miles, and after I got to 15 miles I bumped into someone who actually turned out to be a sea kayak guide as well, and through chatting to them and feeding off their energy after being exhausted, I decided, feck it, I'll keep pushing and I'll go a little bit further than I planned.
Alright.
Is that correct?
Probably on the flight then.
It is 9:45 to 10
Welcome.
right now.
Discoverable.
Past me.
Is it correct?
Alright.
We might have to reconnect it.
It's loud enough though. We can
Yeah.
hear
You heard me?
It is 9:45 to 10 right now. Past me. Arena. Race get into. I left Jedediah 8:10 this morning. Thinking I might go up to top of Texas, if you can see that. It's just about 18 or 20 miles, which is a fucking decent stretch. And then I got about 3/4 of the way up into Gillies Bay. And put in some food and stretch and some water. Made another kayak guide. Random small River sea kayak. And even got the notion of coming to Calgary to take the lunch to the Southwestern, which worked really well to get up to the top of Dixie. Flew up there pushing 104 nautical miles an hour. But coming across Dixie to Balrog was fucking epic. Took me about an hour and 30 minutes to do 3 miles. And let's continue this fucking walk. Now go and find the campsite.
Yes, it's pretty late in the day. I'm absolutely knackered, and now we're going to find a campsite to go to. Lucky for me that when I rocked up this campsite, it was full of RVs, and I rocked up in this kayak, and people were out drinking and eating and around the barbecue, and I was like, oh hey, is there anywhere to camp here? And they're like, a bit dubious, and it's like, it's okay, I just come from a sea kayak, it's just down there. I thought I was some sort of crazy fool, which I was, but not as crazy as they thought. And then they actually picked up my kayak, carried it up, and helped me set up for the night, which was really cool. Along the way, you met some interesting characters who like to live off the grid. This guy was really interesting, and I wanted to land there, but as soon as I seen him, and his eyes were bright green, like the most greenest, intensest eyes I've ever seen, and I just kind of backpedaled a little bit and just had a chat with him. And this is where I eventually camped that night, Marina Island, which was a beautiful campsite, one of the nicest campsites I had. And I was surrounded by a load of locals out celebrating a party for one of the birthdays, and it was a really cool night. And they took me in and had the crack and shared their beer and stories. After that, it turned into the islands between Quadra and Reed Island. And this was pretty upsetting as I came in there. It's a really beautiful area, very popular with tourists, very popular with whale watchers, and really strong tidal currents. As I seen this side, on my left side, I could see a whale breaching. This is part of a raft which used to be used as a fishing setup, and it's just been left there to rot, which is quite disturbing. This is just me in my kayak. There's a lot of these guys along the way. You're never far from an eagle, and they're just impressive. It's like never be there or never seen an eagle so much in your life, and then every day you see them, and then you talk to the locals, and they're like, "Oh yeah, those flying rats." So they're like the gulls over there, but they're just quite an impressive bird. When I did have some downtime, I pretty much had to reorganise my boat and prepare ration for the next section. So repack my bags and rebalance the boat as well. So there was always a job to do on an expedition. There's not too much time to sit around and relax. And then as I cruised up, another video.
Tom.
From Quadro Island, I eventually turned it into
AM, FM, Bluetooth.
It's Monday, day 9, and we're in the John Stone Strait. This famous piece of.
it's actually called Johnson Strait.
We're actually in the fucking position yesterday. Today is where we were yesterday. It was a bit of a funky tidal race. It's just like a giant river running down John Stone. And of course we are going against the current, against the flood. So just been eddy hopping the whole way up. Got caught out once and got swept out a little bit of a paddle to get back into protection. And now we're around the key points. This one here, and a bit further up, and it turns to the left and also narrows as well, so it's going to be interesting. It is at the tail end of the flood, I think.
So when I left the inside of Vancouver Island, and moved on to, left the Vancouver Islands, I turned into the Johnson Strait, and then there was a lot of current running through there. So the idea is usually to get up early and time it with the currents, but I just got up whenever I felt like it. And when I did get up and it looked too hard, I just closed the tent. And then I got up again in another hour and two and then psyched myself up. So quite often I was actually paddling either into the wind or against the current. Just because I was too lazy to get up too early in the morning. I just couldn't handle it. So I tortured myself into the evening. After long days and fighting wind and current and stuff, I was really lucky to have bumped into other kayaking camp, and this is in Johnstone Strait next to Rodson's Bight, which is world famous for its orca, and it's a restricted area, and quite a lot of people go down there to see orca. Orca do all sorts of funny things. They rub on the beach, which leaves really beautiful marble shaped stones, because they're always rubbing on it, and they hang out there, do a lot of fun stuff, and they kind of know it's protected, so no other boats go in there. And these camps were on the outside for where tourists would come to. So it was really cool to meet a kayak guide, but random along the way, and they invited me on to their camp for the night. And they were spent in real luxury. They had quite a good glamping setup. They had like hot showers, they had steam rooms, all sorts of stuff, and chocolate brownie cake, which was amazing. From there, I paddled into fog for a few days. In that part of the world, they call it Fog August, or Fogust, because this is pretty much every day is pea soup. So that's pretty challenging because you can get sick pretty easily, even if you don't feel seasick, and you just can't see anything, so it's really, really boring. And eventually I just burst up and pulled into Port McNeill and found myself a berth and stayed there for the night. And after that I got to Port Hardy, which was the end of leg 1. I was pretty hungry, it was a long day, it was quite wet, and so my happy food was peanut butter. And so this is how I walked in and introduced myself to the tourist office that day. And they took, like, where's the hostel? When I did find the hostel, I was really lucky that they were actually prepared for Aegis like me, and they had a set of wheels, so I was able to wheel my kayak up. I looked at it, it looked at me, it bolted. I was like, oh fuck. So I went, grabbed my bear spray, put it in my pocket, and started to pack up camp. And as I'm down moving onto my kayak, I look up and the same guy standing just a few more meters further down the beach. And I'm like, classic thing to do, make noise, throw stuff, smash pots, throw rocks, yell, scream, sing an ABBA song. None of it did work. He just looked at me, looked around, and then just continued down the beach. And so he scraped around the rocks, I packed my kayak, and we left all peace. As I rounded the north tip of Vancouver Island, just before here, I had an amazing experience and kind of took up my time. I spent about an hour just in the kelp field, watching the bear scavenge on the beach through the rocks, and then this humpback whale started to, in the distance. I could see it in the distance, and I stopped and watched, tried to take videos or pictures. But I had this rule was, if I have an encounter with an animal, I'm going to enjoy it first, and as soon as I've absorbed it, actually by being in the moment, then I would take out the camera. And so more often than not, that doesn't work with animals, so they don't hang around that long. So I spent a lot of time with this humpback, and I actually swam around with it, and I was like, okay, Humpy, I'll see you later. And as I was about to paddle off, it just literally popped up beside me, kind of hung there, and then just cruised down, and I went on, and I was like, wow, that was amazing. And then I came around this point, and I nearly fucking died. I got the timings wrong, and I was against the current, and it was a really strong rip. But I thought, oh, I'll eddy hop out of here, but there was no eddies to hop into. So I just paddled around that rock, and I was paddling in there. I was like, wow, this is hard work. Oh, I'm going backwards. Shit, there's a rock. And so I had to really paddle like F. And then I just had to bail straight into this beach. And I sat there for about 2.5, 3 hours to wait for this current to turn. And then eventually it calmed enough that I could continue. And along the way I would find little morsels like this, we've attached to polystyrene. Polystyrene was the biggest thing that I ever found along the way. And there's so much to see every day. There's always something going on, especially with the intertidal zone. This is quite funny. I used to imagine these as memes, so we're all doing different poses. It was really funny, quite entertaining. This is a black bear scrounging for its dinner. So one of the biggest things when I was paddling this trip was the fear of bears, but the biggest thing out there is probably always the biggest danger to myself if I made a bad decision. Along the way there was a lot going on, the water was also a lot going on underneath. With the kelp I was able to feel where the current was and how strong it was, and then there was also lots of jellyfish along the way, and whatever I could I would pick up and take with me. More often than not, it was quite big. This is a result of logging jams, so they used to raft up all the logs together, and to stop them buffering together they used to put polystyrene, but these things break or things fall apart and nobody was there to clear it up. And this is actually washed up. So this is a storm that's lifted this. This is about 10 metres back inside the forest, and there's tons of that. That was just one piece. This is a stellar sea lion, and these start to appear when it went around the north coast. Quite often when you're in a kayak, it really is quiet, and so nobody picks up on you until you're up there, which is really cool because you get to go up and see things up close, which you wouldn't do if you were like in a powerboat. And so quite often these guys are hanging out, grooming themselves, and yeah, when they would spot you, they'd get a bit antsy. And these guys would make a real splash, and sometimes they would come right up into your boat and just swim underneath you and just pop up on the front to give you a bit of a hello, get out of here. And then as you come around the west coast, there was even more pollution. So with those currents, with those winds, there's a lot more being washed up there, particularly from Asia, and probably Japan, from tsunamis and earthquakes that happened years ago. It's all getting washed up there, and a lot of fishing gear as well. And then some days sometimes it was just too hard. So I just have to chill out and enjoy the views. This is actually probably one of the hardest days. The hardest part of the trip, someone's probably going to ask me later, so I'll answer it now, is that I was paddling in no wind and sunshine. I hate the sunshine when you're kayaking and no wind. It's so hard, so hot. And this was a really long day. As I came in around this point, I was seeing the edge of the beach. I was like, yes, it's on my own. I was really, really cranky. I was having a really bad day, and I just wanted to be on my own and get to camp and crawl into my tent. As I came around, I started to see these other tents and these people on the beach, and I was like, okay, I'll go and check it out. Maybe they're leaving. And then it was like commune people had set up camps and tents and beach gazebos and stuff. So I rocked up there, and this family were just leaving. I was like, oh, excuse me, do you know if we can camp here or whatever? Or what's the story here? I was like, yeah, no, you can't. We're just having lunch. And then I got chatting to them, and I told them what I was doing and stuff. And they're like, oh, are you hungry? Have you eaten? I was like, oh, yeah, I'm always hungry. They're like, oh, hang on. And so they started to give me all their leftovers. And it was actually an old couple who were from the UK. And then the wife was really insistent on me taking food. And she was like, oh, I've got loads of fresh fruit and vegetables up in the car. If you want to come up and take them, I'm happy to give you. And I was like, no, it's cool. I'm happy. I'll just crawl into my tent now. And she insisted, and I was like, no, it's okay. So she gave me some fruit juice and some bread, and the jam was amazing. Unbelievable. Best jam I've ever tasted. So I set up tent there, and there was a little camp with a little small family nearby. They came by and had a chat, and then I told them what I was doing. They were like, oh, that's cool. Asked lots of questions and stuff, and I was like, yeah, that's cool. And then I was sitting, planning my next day, and I heard a knock on my tent. It wasn't a knock. And he turned up with a beer, and I was like, oh my god, how the fuck can I be angry or with myself or have a bad day when there's so much kindness going on? So yeah, it was pretty amazing, and yeah, it turned out to be a great evening and a great day. The next day they actually sent me off on the way, and they actually made a video and shared it on Instagram afterwards, which was really, really cool. Along the way I had to stop and refill my water supplies. I have the filter, which you can see in there, is MSR Trail Shot, and it's set up over here as well. And as I was waiting for the water to purify, to be filtered, I would just kind of wander around. Where my water source would come in, there was another big block of styrofoam as well. And this is a really remote beach, like there wouldn't be anybody landing here, only bears. And this is a typical evening on the west coast. On my own on the west coast, on my beach to myself, and I was just, Channel 8 was where I was going to get the weather forecast for the next day, and then I'll have my kayak genie right next to me. And yeah, so there I actually caught some fish, and I had some fish on the beach and a nice fire. Most days I would light a fire, which was quite nice. And then these guys were always entertaining. No matter where I was, there was a sea otter popping up. And again, you get quite close with the kayak, and then they wouldn't see it. And then as soon as they see it, they pop up and have a look. They're real funny because they like this, like a little fighter pose, ready to go boxing. And if they had a little pup with them, the mother would be up like this, on high alert. The pup is just like playing around. And then when she thought you were in danger, she would go and she would grab the pup and just dive in the water. It was hilarious. And this was every day. Anytime I was on a low point, there's usually a sea otter there to entertain me, and I would forget and realise where I was. The other saving grace was this snack food. This is hands down the best gorp or trail mix I've ever had. And I was really lucky to have a sponsorship over in Vancouver, Naked Snacks, who make really wholesome, good snacks, and they managed to give me like 5 kilos of this. On the first week, it dissolved about 2 kilos of it, so then after that I had to ration it out. And so it was only on the really tough days. And then I got really indisciplined and ate it all. So more often than not, I was cooking on a campfire. I did have fuel in our stove. But cooking on the campfire, I was able to control the temperatures, and I did quite a bit of baking. So I was baking some bread there, I think. This is on the westernmost part of Vancouver Island on Brooks Peninsula. And as I came round into the southern tip of Brooks Peninsula, now I was entering into like more habitated areas and more visited. There's a lot of kayakers that go around this. This is around Brooks Peninsula. There's been a huge effort to clean up beaches on the remote part of Vancouver Island, and they've been doing this for years. And this is what they're left with. They'll leave that there, a helicopter come along, pick it up and take it away. Even their bags are all full and they've accumulated a lot of stuff. You just have to walk 5 feet away from there, and there's more and more plastic and pollution there. And then it raises the question, is this just a feel-good factor that we're actually taking this away? Does it have an actual benefit? Because the amount of effort of getting people into that area, helicopters, barges, resources, and then having to actually process it at the end is also, you know, contributing to it. Main sort of transport on an island. Yeah, they like their big D8s over there. And this is a typical fish, a rock cod that I'll catch with my little fishing rod. I was not a fisherman, so it was really easy over there to catch fish, especially these guys, because they're territorial and they run along the bottom. So you just pick the water deep enough, about 10-15 meters, and you're guaranteed to catch one of these, which was good for me. And then as I came down past the Bunsby Islands, which were amazing, I came into Kayaking. This is Spring Island. I think we got a wee video here.
Alrighty, day 21. 3 weeks down, 2 to go. We're just down here in Kayaking at Spring Island. So just camped at this little beach last night. We're all myself. See, there's tent, kayak. There's the fire. On the fire we have some little buttons being made. This is a little treater, white and brown flour. Put oatmeal in there, some cinnamon, ginger, nut, almonds, as well as raisins.
So yeah, when I had time off, then I would usually fill that time with preparing for the next portion, and then also baking as well, which was good. And then I could add a bit of peanut butter on the bread. When I was here, I bumped into Dave, who'd helped me set up on Vancouver Marina Bay, who was the owner of Blue Dog Kayaking, and we went out fishing. He ended up catching way more than I did. And so we caught another couple of fresh fish out there. It was great to touch base with him because he's an instructor and a guide and he knows the area. And it was just good to see him after 3 weeks as well. And these guys as well. Self-care is important in the animal kingdom. And then something we're quite familiar with here in Auckland is the oyster catcher. We see them every day on our trips. So it was really cool to see them up close and personal at some of the camps. And this may look a bit blurry, but this is actually the picture from behind my tent screen. So this is after a really long day. Again, a really hot, dry day, and I was hallucinating by the end of it. And so, because I've been on my own for days on end and wouldn't see or speak to anyone, I would always hope and anticipate to meet someone, which would be kind of like a bonus. You're like, yeah, someone to talk to. And so I seen that this is like these bobbing up and down, so I thought, oh, great, kayakers, this is going to be so cool, I'll get to meet them. As I got closer and closer, I realised it was nothing there at all. This was an empty beach. It was a really beautiful beach. And as I was sitting there pretty down on myself, I seen this fin appear through the water. I was like, shit, it's a shark, and it was coming straight from my kayak. I was, huh. And then it just went, boom, hit my kayak and went underneath it, and I was like, that's a pretty dumb shark. I was like, oh, alright. And then I cruised into the beach and set up shop here. And this is an amazing little beach as well. This is one of the locals, so this is probably what I've seen. He wasn't much conversation, but he listened. And then as I left that bay, then there's a couple more of these guys. And then I made my way down towards Tofino. This is second last day before I went to Tofino, and this is at Hot Spring Cove, which is world famous. So I've been dreaming about Hot Springs Cove probably since I left Port Hardy, because there was no showers along the way, and hot water in a tired body is heaven. And I got in there, and it was just full of tourists and kids, and it was noisy and stuff, and there's people drinking in there, and you know, they'd all float in by seaplane or by boat. But I managed to get my couple of minutes underneath the hot water, and I was relaxed, and I came into this beach, and I was like, this is cool. On the same beach as well, I generally do beach scavenge and see what I can find in terms of rubbish, and I also found a book, which was quite cool. I ran the book along the way, and I read the whole book along the way, and as I was reading it, I read pages and pulled them out and light the fire with them the next day. And my Kindle, I actually left my Kindle on the plane. So my Kindle had all the books I wanted to read, and I had all the tidal, the current, the maps, all the stuff I planned, and it was all on the plane somewhere between London and Canada. And this is looking back to Tofino. This is when I got to Tofino. I popped into Tofino, went straight to the supermarket to try and buy something, and then I just got lost in this chaos, and I ended up buying a cinnamon bun and then walking out and going straight back to my kayak to find this little campsite. It was just sensory overload, and then the next day I plucked up the courage in the evening to go back in. I was very fortunate to meet Tofino Sea Kayaking. They helped set me up and looked after me while I was there, and they also gave me a hot shower as well, which was epic. And then from Tofino, I started leg 3, which is the final one. So the last 8 days, last 170 nautical miles, 315 kilometers. So at this stage, my body's tired, my mind is pretty tired, but I'm pretty excited now. I kind of know that I'm going to make it as long as the weather and everything plays ball. And so we left Tofino and then heading down towards the Broken Group. And it was a big paddle. It was about 30 nautical miles to the Broken Group, so I thought I would split it up into 2. But like any day, I started out with a plan, and the plan always changed as well. And so I got halfway and I pulled out my phone because I had some maps saved on there, and I looked at where the next campsite was, and I was like, man, I've survived the whole trip without losing anything except for my sport. So this is pretty good. I was like, better not drop my phone, better not drop my phone. And so as I'm closing the cover on the phone, I was like, shit. And an orca popped up right in front of my kayak, literally from where that bookshelf was. I'm like, shit. And then a whole pod of them came underneath me, and then I was like, oh, cool, friends. So I started paddling after them, and they were cruising down the shoreline at the same time I was, and gave me inspiration and energy, and I continued on. And I pushed through sunset. And the other thing that was drawing me to the Broken Group, I was going to meet up with some of the guys from Blue Dot Kayaking, Amber and Kiva, who's actually Irish. I heard a lot about Kiva, but I've never actually met her. And so I knew they were there, so I thought if I could get down there, it'd be really cool. So I landed in there as the sun was setting, and they welcomed me with their team. They were out on an instructional expedition, so I had about 7 or 8 new kayakers who were learning the skills, and 2 girls were teaching them all what we do here is like a wet exit and so forth. And then just the roar, the cheers, I landed on the beach, and all the questions, and they lifted the kayak up. And I was like, all I had to do was hold the beer. So that was quite epic, and we shared stories around the campfire, and it was just, it was bliss. And because I bagged a few extra days along the way, I stayed in the Broken Group for a few days. When I was there, I met it's a kayaker's paradise, everybody knows about it, and a lot of people visit, which is quite cool to meet like-minded people. And then this was one of the kind of park rangers out there who looks after the parks, make sure you're paying your fees and make sure everybody's safe. He's also from the native tribe who kind of like our iwi over here, who own the land and manage the land. And so he would come around and tell us stories of how the islands were formed and the history and culture, which is really, really interesting. Vancouver Island, BC has a lot of history, which is very, very much in line with New Zealand's modern history. So Vancouver itself was first explored and found by Captain Cook back in 1778, and he came out on the west coast of Vancouver Island, where past Nootka, north of Tofino, and then eventually he brought a guy by John Beers, who actually ended up starting to settle the first colony out there. And those first colonists, then they got into fur trading, so they used to hunt all the sea otters, and they actually hunted them to pretty much extinction on the west around Vancouver Island. And that was in the 1800s. Then mid-1850s, around the mid-1800s, Europe and Britain started to run out of their own timber, whereas BC was full of timber and it seemed like an abundance. So they started to cut down all the timber in the west coast of Canada, around BC, and then also on Vancouver Island. And they thought it was abundant and it was never ending, but they've cut down pretty much all of it at this stage. And it's very rare that you'll come across a large section of native trees. Vancouver Island itself has been clear cut twice, and they're already on their 3rd cycle. So even as I was paddling along the west coast in this beautiful untouched environment, and you could see they were clear cutting on your left in all these hills. It's hard to put in pictures because it's such a distant thing. And so they had these roads going up around these hills or mountains as they were, and they were just cutting it all down. So it was bittersweet to be out there to see those kind of things. And there was a lot of discussion that night over a campfire and trying to solve world problems over some whiskey. And then the next day I moved to another camp, and I met a group of ladies that no doubt I've had trips with here at Auckland as well. Four or six ladies, kind of middle-aged. Kids are more or less grown up and they're on their adventure away for 4 or 5 days. And they took all the trappings, took so much food that they couldn't pack it in the kayak, so they're happy to feed me. And we chilled out, had chats, and we did a bit of baking while I was having a day off. And it was really cool to hang around and share stories with them. I left the broken group after a really settled period, and Amber had just texted me the day before. She's like, "Hey, just so you know, there's a wave warning in force for the west coast. 3 to 4 meter swells, or about 10-foot swell or waves. Just be careful, or probably don't go out." I got a bit complacent at this stage, and I was like, right, I had my 3-4 days and let's get out on the water. So I got on the water. I might have a video here. I got on the water, and as I left the broken group, it's pretty sheltered, so you don't really feel the hustle and bustle. But as soon as I got onto the outer side of Cape Beale, then it all became a bit real.
Cool. We're out here crossing the channel to the Deer Group and then back to the mainland over by Banfield before I head into Wongapuka Strait. She's next morning. It's blowing pretty hard all night from the southeast. It died off there about 2 hours ago. I was supposed to swing around to the northwest. There's got a big swell coming in as well, so it's good big conditions. And we'll just take you along for a ride.
That was my camp, it was useless. So I left there, I went around the point, and it was massive. It was about 3 to 5 meters of swell, which is probably the height of this building as we stand outside it. And I had to go out about 2 miles out from the point because the waves were so big they were breaking quite far out. As I was paddling along, I was one eye on the swell on my right, and then I was watching the waves on my left, making sure I wasn't going to get blown in, because I had a following wind, but it was blowing to me straight to land. And as I was paddling, I'd be like, yeah, sweet, and then I would just drop, and then I look up, and then there's a bigger set coming in, and I was like, shit, don't break, and then I had to go further and further and further. As I went around the point, I knew it was a bay, but when I got around the point, the bay was just closed off with all these massive breakers. And so what ensued then was 8.5 hours in the kayak with no breaks, about 20 odd miles, coming down the coast. I could see land, I could see people, see beaches, but because it was so exposed, there was massive waves breaking on there, and if I stopped, then that was the end of it. There was no way I was going to get back out, so I thought I'd try to go as far as possible. As I was paddling along, it was quite cool because I would see a lot of wildlife along the way, and lots of whales started to pop up, grey whales especially. And it doesn't look quite big there, but it's probably kind of like when you go fishing, the fish is always bigger than in reality, but it was pretty big at the time. I sat out the back there for about 30 minutes watching the waves come in, and the waves came in different sets. It was a big set of about 3 or 4, which were they were massive, probably about the size of this room as they break. And then there was a medium-sized train of about 3 or 4, and then a small train of about 7. So it's all about timing. So I got in and I crept in just behind where they're breaking, and as you try and land and surf, what the idea is to catch the smallest wave as possible, catch the back of it, and then just follow in the back of the wave, hit the beach nice and gently, jump out and grab your kayak and run. As I get in, creeping in, I have my green on paddle, which is pretty much the same as this wooden one up here next to the Celtic. And they're really great. It's what saved me and got me around the island, but there's not a lot of power off them, like the big shovels that are on the end of that paddle. So I tried to get power strokes off and I couldn't get enough momentum, so I missed my small train. And then I was in the oh shit zone, and the waves started to come in and they're getting bigger and bigger, and I just had to make a decision. And then before I could make a decision, wave just came and just smashed on me, and I just got engulfed in it and just automatically got into what's called well, it's a high brace. So I had the paddle like this in the wave, and it was just white water in me. I couldn't see anything, and I just and then suddenly boom hit the sand, and then just got washed up the beach, still in this position, holding on for dear life. And then when I could see the light, I got up, tried to jump out, collapsed, and then crawled, grabbed my kayak and crawled up the beach. And I was like, whoa, that was amazing! This is...
Well, we made it to shore. We were both still in one piece. We got stick here. That was a gnarly landing. Holy shit. Fucking hell. Just watch.
So this is just like the west coast of New Zealand. There's so much power in that wave, it's just unreal.
Yeah, so we came through that. Thought I fucking timed it, but it's hard to get enough fucking power off the Greenland paddle to get off the back of the wave. So I ended up getting caught in one of the big ones. I just side surfed, fucking low braced into it, got swallowed up fucking, and just rushed up the beach. Jumped as quick as I could, got out, grabbed everything. Even managed to keep my hat and glasses on, which is kind of incredible. Yeah, lucky landing. Out there in the bay as well, it was quite cool. I was skating out from where to land, and spotted this. I was like, oh, it's a fucking whale. And it was about a couple of meters away. So I stood there looking for it, and it was just stopped there. Next minute, rose up. Fucking 5 feet off my bow on my right side, and just a great whale cruised over the surface and then back down. Fuck, it's quite incredible.
Yeah. So that was great landing and surviving that. As any kayaker would tell you, they'll probably score me, as I wasn't wearing a helmet, which was a big no-no on that day, and I was really lucky that I didn't come out unscathed. And yeah, I had time to reflect on that on the beach that night, and it was coming to the end. It was about 3 or 4 days, maybe 5 days left, and so there was a really nice sunset and time to reflect and figure out a plan how to get out past this again the next day. So the next morning looked like this. I was a bit more prepared, helmet on and Euro blades, killed a paddle, and then I was ready to go. I was launching there on low tide, so there was a lot more exposed rock, and so it was actually really, really tricky, and it was all about timing. Otherwise I was going to get hit by a wave and get washed onto rocks, and it would have been messy. And there's no one around there to pick you up as well, so you have to be self-sufficient. What ensued after that, I came into the Wongafuka Strait, which was this body of water between Vancouver Island and Washington. And then as I came in there, it was like the home straight. On about the third last day, I had bumped into 2 other paddlers who had been paddling around Vancouver Island, and I'd heard about them when I left Port Hardy, and I always thought it'd be really cool to meet them. So I'd actually passed them along the way, unbeknown, and I bumped into them on about 3 or 4 days before the end. I only got a chance to speak to them for a few hours, because the next morning I was going to get up at the crack of dawn and hit the water. It was really cool to meet them. And this is taken the day after my birthday, so on my birthday I thought it would be a great idea. It's something to remember, boy, is to go and paddle the longest as possible. So I got up as soon as there was as I could. I'm not a morning person. I got up and on the water at 6 o'clock, and my mission was to do the longest day, try and get as far as possible as I could. So what happened there was nothing too exciting. I just paddled continuously for about 14 and a half hours, covered about 75 kilometers. Someone had told me about a potential campsite. They put a dot on a map for me, and it says it's not a campground, but you know you can pull in there if you get stuck. And so it's sun is setting. They were massive.
And you probably don't even live there half the time. It's just fucking, that's madness. That's such a waste. And even if you have fucking that much people living there, you don't need all that space. Yeah, crazy. Anyway, at one point in time I would have loved to and dreamt of building a house such as that, but now it doesn't really interest me. I like the location, but not maybe the big structures. And as we're coming around, I can hear this music in the background, and it.
Yeah, so it's funny how things change. So I paddled in and landed on the beach, which I launched from 35 days ago. It's a bit of an anticlimax. You kind of build up in your imagination that everybody's following you on the tracker, and that they're going to turn up with a banner and welcome you in this banner, party in champagne. And I'm kind of preparing my speech on the way in, clearing my throat, and I rock up and there's nobody there. Not a soul. It's late in the evening, and then the thing, as I'm unpacking, I finished unpacking, and two people walked in with their little plastic kayaks, and they're just going for a paddle around the bay. And they're like, it's like, oh, you guys going for a paddle? It's like, yeah. Had a chit chat. Like, where'd you come from? Oh, I left here 35 days ago, and where'd you go? Oh, I went around the island. They're like, oh, we're just going to paddle around the bay here. It's like, oh, okay. It's probably had just as much fun. And that's what I was left with, Genie on the beach, and that was all my gear and my paddle. And I just hung out there and waited for Amber to come pick me up. The communication wasn't very good, so I had to wait for a little while. So I killed a bit of time, as anyone that ever does when they have time and done something big.
Well, that's a wrap. We're back on land in Mill Bay, and we've joined the dots. Making one wiggly circle up all the way around Vancouver Island. This one up and spent my last $5 on a couple of beers, the cheapest I could get, and just chilling out waiting for Amber to pick me up. All the bags are packed. Kayak is back on dry land, and yeah. That's it.
And then it hit me. No. So that was that. That was the expedition. I know it's probably taken a lot longer than most people anticipated, including myself. But I guess if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, I got one. I even stood up for my question. Hey, so your favourite kayak was a NDK Explorer?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, two-part question. Why is your favourite kayak? And the second part is, why don't we have them in New Zealand?
Why is the favourite? Well, it probably ties into that first experience of sea kayaking, and that was the boat I seen. Then, like everything I do, I want to research into it, and I want to know the ins and outs of it and what's the best of it is. And NDK Explorer is the best of the best of what it is. For what it is, it's an expedition kayak, it's proven. And the person who built it, Nigel Dennis, who I've met, and he's world-renowned and a really sound guy. So it was a real honour that I asked him to sponsor my trip, and he asked me what colour and what kayak, and he shipped it over without any questions asked. And I asked him then, what would you like me to do for it in return? And he's like, just do the trip, enjoy it, and you know, if you've enjoyed it and it works for you, tell everybody, or anyone who's interested. And that was that. We'll follow on from there, which is pretty cool, because I actually achieved a dream of mine when I first started out kayaking in 2015. I met all these awesome paddlers who paddled these NDK boats at this first symposium, this festival. And then I checked out, did my research, and I was like, these guys were sponsored paddlers, so this was like the creme de la creme, I thought. And through doing this trip, he made me one of their sponsored paddlers, which is really cool, and put me on their website, which was, you know, an honour and a recognition for 4 years of hard work. Yeah. Hopefully, I have a kayak in Wales. I just have to figure out how to get it over to here. It's not cheap, and so we're trying to find the best way possible. But hopefully, one day we can bring in a few NDK boats and let everyone else paddle and experience them. Yeah.
Isn't there a guy in Wellington that brings them in?
Steve Flack brings in a few.
Steve, that's it. Yeah.
And he brings in
The Romany.
yeah, the odd few here and there through
Mm.
in caravans. Yeah, so you can't get them. They are expensive. They're $5,000, but they are the best boat, and they'll last 20 years as long as you look after them.
What happened to your kayak? Where did that one
Uh,
end up now?
Yeah, so it survived. Had a few scrapes on it, but it was 100%, and it's now in Canada where I left as a demo boat. So people interested in buying that kayak, try it out now on Mill Bay where I left it, which is quite cool. Blue Dog Kayaking, who helps support me and sponsor me, they sell these kayaks and they run expeditions over there, instructional guided tours as well. They're awesome. Yeah. Any other questions?
That MSR tent, did you find that easy to use?
Yeah, it's a great tent, really lightweight, easy to set up, especially when you're tired and you want to be fast about it, and it's packed out quite well as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've taken it on, I use it on all my trips. Yeah.
Is it a multi-pitch?
Yeah, you can set it, 'cause it's a freestanding tent, so you
Freestanding.
can set it using just the outer fly,
Yeah,
or you can set it with just the inner part.
yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes if there was bugs around, I'd just sleep with the inner and I'd look at the stars, which is really cool.
That's the Hubba Bubba one, is it?
Hubba Hubba NX, yeah.
Yeah.
So MSR again, where I just reached out to people, contacts I met, and MSR helped sponsor me with quite a bit of gear, which is some of it's sitting up here. So if you're interested in what I used and what it looks like in real life, and you can see it for yourself and just put your hands on it. There's all sorts of equipment up there. You're more than welcome to have a look around it.
I was just going to follow on from that. How did you contact sponsors and who sponsored you for what?
Yes, sponsors. These guys sponsored me. I'm really lucky tonight to have Denise from Kai Carrier is just at the door. Denise actually bought the company of Kylie who sponsored me, and she's taken the reins over and running with it. Kai Carrier set up on this table over here. I set up with some of their products, so please go check them out. Really hard thing about doing single-use plastic free was finding products that you could still carry food around in a dry way, because food gets wet and it's spoiled with seawater. So I used Kai Carrier, there's some up here. I actually didn't take a lot of Kai Carrier bags back because as I met people, they were really impressed with it, and so I just kind of gave it to people because it really helped me out so much. So I just emailed them, I did research. Friends of mine also use these products, like the Honey Wraps, who also sponsored me from here, and they were like, yeah, these are amazing, you should contact them. And so I just said, hey, I'm doing this is what I'm doing, and then go from there. Auckland Sea Kayaks, they were a real hard one, a real hard ass running after them. NRS as well, I used to contact them there, who you build contact through the outdoor industry and kayaking and stuff, and they're really good. They sponsored me a lot of dry bags, a first aid kit, and other bits and pieces, and their dry bags were really, really good, which some of them are up there. Sunsaver is a company in New Zealand that I contacted. There's actually two guys in Auckland running it, and that's what I use for power. So I had their power pack and the solar charger. A small company, they couldn't afford to give me one, but they gave it to me at cost or wholesale, which was quite cool. Naked Snacks was the snacks in Canada, which were amazing. The Vigo is Honey Wraps, pretty much. So beeswax wraps for preserving food. So my breads and stuff that I used, I would put them in there and they would last like a week, which are really good. They're based in Canada. And yeah, Blue Dog were amazing. The support from Nick as well, really loved this trip, especially with the concussion and managing all that. And then Nick's enthusiasm for any kind of adventure is great. And able to bounce off ideas along the way was amazing and great help as well. And then he helped set up most of this because I was too busy putting it all together. So him and Tom put all this here together, which is amazing. Yeah, so kayak carriers right there. Highly recommend it. They lasted 35 days going around Vancouver Island, and they're all still going good. It's not the solution to plastic, but it's a step in the right direction as well. And I use them in my day-to-day.
And just following on from that, we're a small company and we thought we were pretty plastic free, and then Dan came aboard and pointed out that we're not really. And then and so we started using these kayak carriers for a lot of stuff at work, and we even put meat in them and then put them in the dishwasher after using them, and then bring them to the butcher, and the butcher, instead of vacuum packs them, does this. So we use these commercially every day, and you know, they're awesome, eh? I highly recommend them.
Give them with all our guides.
And they're like lots of different sizes, and you can make anything with them, and put snack bags in them, and last in and out of kayaks, sand, grit, and just perfect, eh? And you'll actually work out they're really way cheaper than buying snaplock bags.
Yeah, so just reach out, ask. The worst thing that anyone says is no, or they don't answer you, which is great, and you don't feel you're rejected.
Did your injury affect you during the trip?
Yeah, so that was probably the biggest thing going out there. The thing that helped me was this. This is a traditional paddle. This is a Greenland paddle. This is Tom's. He made it himself. If you want to paddle like this, just contact Tom. But I use one very like this, and this is what saved me. There was no way I could have paddled around there with my tendonitis. My shoulder and elbow were just too weak, and they would flare up when I would use the Euroblade, which I'd used for 4 years prior and never had any issues. So with this Greenland paddle, it's a lot easier on the body. It's a different stroke, and because it's a gradual blade, it's a lot. It's not instant power. It's it's kind of like a smooth power transfer, or yeah. And so I was able to use this, and it's what saved me and got me around, hands down. So this is what the Inuits used for, and still use for 6,000 years. That Euroblade is adapted over canoe paddle blades. Basically, someone figured that you could put two canoe paddles together, and that's how a Euroblade was invented back in the mid-1900s. Yeah. Maybe even further, actually. Maybe go back to a guy called. Anyway, it's another one. Yeah. So that's how I got around. Yeah, and day by day, I slowly built up strength. Yeah. It did hurt at times. I just had to take it easy. Yeah.
Despite all your planning, what were you not prepared for? Like what kind of, out of everything, and what was your biggest learning out of the whole thing?
That's a really, really good question. The biggest learning was mind over matter. You hear it all every time, everyone says it, but until you experience it, you don't truly know it. Some long days where I would get on the water after 3 hours and I'm like, nah, I'm done, I can't do it anymore. And then suddenly an animal sighting or something, or my mind would be tricked into looking at something else, and then I'm suddenly going for another 3 hours. My body hurt. After the first week, my body was always sore and hurting and aching, especially in the morning. Mornings were the hardest part, but as soon as I got warmed up and got going, I could just keep going. Your body is an absolute machine, and we only use a small percentage of it, and what's limited is the mind. So that's the biggest learning. Planning, probably the simple things, like the reading the currents and planning the days, would have made my life a lot easier. I kind of knew about it, but I didn't have my knowledge gap, because I kayaked mainly in fjords and on the coast. My knowledge gap was currents, strong currents, and large strong currents, and actually paddling in fog. And I wasn't able to prepare so much for those because of the concussion, and I just kind of let it go and said, oh, I'll just take it as it comes. So yeah, that's that. Thanks for the question.
Great presentation, man.
Cheers. You get a prize.
If you had to do the same trip over again, what would you do differently next time?
I'd do it with other people. Yeah, and I'd probably just stay on the west coast. Yeah.
Why did you decide to do it by yourself?
I've travelled quite a lot, and most of my travels have been solo. Just because it's easy and I don't have to kind of negotiate with someone else what to do. It's also trying to organise someone else. So I did put it out there to people, and there were several people that were like, yeah, I'd be really keen to do an adventure with you. I was like, okay, here's the details, and this is what we're doing, and da-da-da-da. And then their interest fall away because everybody's got different commitments. So I would have liked to do it with someone else, but to find a partnership that works is very challenging, and to do it for 35 days would be a real test. So
now that you've done it, are you like, take it off the list, kind of like done it, or are you mad to do another similar trip again?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's addictive.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've got a long list of I'm just plotting and
Really?
yeah.
Well, that was the next question
Yeah.
to ask. What is your next plan?
Oh, jeez. Kayaking wise,
I think Nick pointed something like that out in the beginning if you have to ask it.
yeah, I think life and adventure now is to settle down and get roots here. Like I've got to work and put on my residency, and I owe it to Nick, to commit and give a full season. So yeah, I'll be staying put, but I think micro adventures now, taking off little things around here. Kayaking golf is amazing. It's just like I've paddled around a lot of places around the world, but it's just amazing. You can just jump on the water and go out and experience all the different wildlife, lots of birds, and just the island life out there is incredible. So there's just so much to see out there. I want to get out and around Great Barrier Island again, which is really, really cool. And I kind of want to use what I've learnt to teach. So I want to do more instructional expeditions, teach people skills and bring them on expeditions and empower them to do things like this. What I did is, it's all grand and big and looks good, but what I did is equivalent to someone's 3-day kayak paddling around Waiheke or out and around Motatapu, Waiheke. They're probably going to get the same experience that I did. I just, my levels and experiences and everything's kind of pushing the limit. But it's hard work. An expedition like that is not easy, and the day-to-day is just a grind for most of the time, and then you just snap into little moments, living in the moment every so often. That kind of makes it worth it. Like that, it's into place. Actually, I'm here now. I'm doing this, and that's all that matters. So I'd like to paddle around the islands of North Island and South Island, Ireland. Probably the biggest one, if I ever get a chance to do it, I'd like to paddle the north coast of Russia, which would be epic along that coast, which is fairly exposed, hardly paddled, and maybe the Northwest Passage, which hasn't been kayaked yet, but it might be paddled this next year. So yeah, the dreams are always flowing. I'm just going to find the time. Yeah.
One question over here.
How did you get your concussion?
It's not very glamorous. Our base is just a few doors up in the garage up there, and it was finished a sun trip, so it was about 12 o'clock at night, and there was a knot in one of the ropes, so I was untying the rope and I was talking to Eric, and the knot was really stiff, and as I undid it, the rope, like, yes, got it, and then the end of it flicked back into my eye, and as I did, I went, and the rope end went into my eye, and it was really painful. But that pain subsided, and then next day I started to experience concussion symptoms. Yeah, so that was that. So I gave myself an X-ray and a concussion, and it was thanks to Nuala that actually I got onto it, because I was busy working. It was 10 days later, and she was persistent in telling me, "Go get it checked out. Go get it checked out." And I did, and it was. Yeah. Any other questions?
Was there anything that you took with you that at the time you thought, nah, do I really need to find space for it? And
I took two tarps, and but then I was very lucky with the weather was mostly dry, so I didn't use 2 tarps. I used 1. So, well, I think I took too much food, or I took the right amount. I took home food, and I had about 35 days of food packed with me. The trouble was, I couldn't focus at the time and going into details and working out calculations, so I just went into the bulk barn with the car carrier bags, and I just started filling stuff up. And I was like, yep, that looks right, yep, that looks right, and just filled it up. So I took way too much rice and pasta and not enough oatmeal. And so I ended up giving away pasta and rice and ended up buying bulk oatmeal along the way. So yeah, but otherwise pretty lean and on point.
if you do another trip, say around the North Island of New Zealand, will you also try to single-use plastic free and carry all that food again, or would you?
I would. If we're doing it now that I am based here, I would probably make stuff and post it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do it that way. If I wanted to do fast, that's the way I would do it. Or if I just wanted to be on my own off-grid, then I could do it with single use. Yeah. Any other questions?
Awesome. Hey, so we've got a bit of food over here if anyone's interested.
I'll say a couple more words, sorry to interrupt, Nick. Just like thank yous and all that jazz. The biggest epiphany of this trip was people. I experienced so much kindness, so much compassion, so much help along the way. It would blow you to tears sometimes. And when I was on the lowest point, there was always someone there to pick me up or offer help. They didn't know my story, they didn't know anything about me. They just seen me coming from a kayak and they see me struggling, which was really, really heartening. And one of the things I really learned to take away is that people are all individual. We're all completely individual. We're all very, very much ourselves, and we're unique. But we all share at the heart of us the same care, the same compassion, for anyone else in need. And we just layer things up as we move into the cities. When you're out in nature, you're a lot more vulnerable. You're a lot more yourself because you don't have the layers of protection of clothes or things like iPhones to hide behind and things like that. So that was a really cool thing. And I had so much help along the way, just countless amounts of time and people, and more than I can remember, more than I can thank. So just thank them if they're watching this. Thank you. What's the video? Although it says I was solo, I was not solo. In physical sense, sure, but the whole way through this journey, I had help. From the very beginning, 4 years ago, I had mentors and instructors that were inspiring and helpful, and I hope to pass that on. People that worked with, looked after me and cared for me. I had really solid friends who I'm really lucky to have. Some of them here who helped me along the way, especially when I was down, when I needed support, when I needed ideas to bounce off. They were always very there. When I had a blog post to post, a good friend Derby was able to review it and correct all my mispronunciations and take out all the F's and the Q's. Yeah, so it's great support, and the family as well. They've kind of learned to love and accept my adventures and never stepped foot and suggested that. They've obviously suggested other alternatives like moving home and living at home with mum so that she can look after you. They never roadblocked me and always encouraged me what to do. So I'm really fortunate for that. And sponsors and supporters that I mentioned that take a chance and believe in me. The other thing is like ACC is a huge part to play in this. Really good system what we got here. I wouldn't have got to the start line without ACC, from the doctors to the PTs to the chiropractors to the medical profession. They really helped out, and once they heard what I was doing, they were really helpful and proactive in helping me. Like I mentioned, mentors, instructors, Passage Adventures as well. They were really helpful. Some two girls, Matilda and Lucy, who had actually paddled the Inside Passage a year before me, and they also did it coincidentally single-use plastic free, and they were really helpful because I got in touch with them and they gave me so much information. Also gave me all their charts as well. Yeah, and you guys, thanks for coming along and taking time out of your Monday night and listening to me whistle on. I would keep going until the cows come home, but I think it's Thomas. Shut up.